What's happening, guys? Silent Mike checking in on location down at my second home, Barber Brigade, filming. If you guys haven't kept up with the vlogs, we're filming the new Kaizen series, the latest program. Just showing you guys a little bit of a session that we caught up in, hanging out with Bart, my boy Cerro Park, Sandy's getting some benching, and then Connor, who is behind the camera, also got in some workout, got a little bit of training with us. Common question, common theme maybe, if you guys follow me on Instagram or hopefully here, you guys see different rep schemes, different set schemes, and I'm constantly getting questions about programming and, do more videos on programming. How do you learn about programming? As much as I would love to just transfer all my knowledge to you guys on programming, programming is kind of a mix of knowing the basics, progressive overload, frequency, volume, intensity, etc., and then a lot of it's just experience and knowing how to troubleshoot. So, but today we're going to talk about kind of sets, reps, different schemes, and the stimulus, and maybe when to use them. So, as you guys know, both Bart and I are cutting using the Kaizen fat loss program and variations of it based on our schedules. I can lift a little bit more often. Bart's a little bit more tied up with just getting filmed, so he cannot lift as frequently, so we kind of adjust things accordingly. But I'm a big fan of submaximal training, so I do the majority of my training and my clients' training between 50 and 75%. That allows you to train more frequently, more volume, and also with better technique. The closer you lift to your 1 rep max, too often you build bad habits of bad form. So lifting in that 70% range, you can lift perfectly, you can lift more volume at that range, and you can also produce more force. You can be faster and more explosive. So basically what Bart and Cerro had today was a bunch of triples. Now, triples are a low rep scheme, but you turn them high sets, turns into high volume. Now, volume, obviously sets times reps times weight, how much work you do in a workout a week or a year. And people talk about, well, high volume training is the best way to go. High volume training is very effective for many, but you don't want to tip over kind of that jar of recovery. Some people talk about, I'm taking a selfie there just to let the Instagram know I'm friends with the owner of Barber Brigade. So you have kind of this jar or this gas tank, and if you tip over, you're going to get injured or regress. If you leave that jar full, which is kind of your recovery or your stress jar, you can continue. So high volume is all relative. If you're doing 1 set of 5 this week, and next week you do 10 sets of 5, that is very, very high volume. If you're doing 1 set of 5 this week and you go to 5x5, that is still high volume. But if you're only squatting once a week and doing a 5x5, doing 3 sets 3 different days a week is kind of more high volume, and that's kind of the approach I typically take. So we're doing triples. Now, when you're doing triples, often people ask what percent to use. Well, I'm doing sets of 6. What percent to use? Now, you can use a lot of different percentages. Obviously there's something like a max triple and a max set of 6, which I don't typically or often advise for, because we always want to leave some rep in the tank. We never want to reach technical failure. We want to be able to grease the groove, make the reps perfect over time. And if you're doing a max set of anything, 3, 6, 10, 3, 6, 9, damn girl fine, suck it to me one more time, you won't be able to do those perfectly. And then also, once you reach your limit and you start grinding reps, it kind of takes away from that recovery tank that we talked about. And so the next squat session, perhaps you'll feel sluggish, you'll be sore, you'll be beat up, and you won't be able to do the sets and reps needed. So we always kind of want to play one step behind, that way we can always continue to progress. So with triples, often for an experienced lifter, a max triple will be around maybe 87.5% to 92.5%. That's max effort triple. Again, I'm the fan of the submaximal training, so we're not doing that a lot. What I might do triples for is something like 70 to 75%, and that'll be kind of more like a strength day. The more experienced you get, the higher the percent, the more difficult it is. So if you can only bench 185 pounds, 70% for triples is nothing. But if you're starting to reach 350, 400, 450, 500 pounds, sets of 3 at 70 to 75% becomes pretty difficult. So we'll do higher sets, maybe 5 to 10 sets of 3 to get a lot of work done with a moderate weight. So the volume is high, we get a lot of time and chances, different opportunities to perfect our skill, but we're still stimulating the muscle with enough volume for it to grow and enough volume for us to stay fatigued and continue to build strength. Now, people talk about deloads a lot. That's another time you might be able to do something like a triple. So if you have 55 to 65% on the bar and you're doing triples, you may still get some stimulus out of that. A typical conjugate West Side speed day would be something similar to that, but also something like a deload day. So if you're squatting 3 days a week, and typically it's something like kind of a heavy, medium, light, or it's a hypertrophy day, a strength day, and a power day, and you're just feeling a little too beat up, and this is either on the day you make this decision, or you could program it ahead of time as a deload. You could do triples near 55% just to get some work done, to continue to grease the groove, but not tax yourself beyond the limit. One of the main things that lower reps are done in my type of programming is to build that strength. So as I mentioned, we're not going to be doing 90% for triples, although we may start to push that limit near a peak in the last month of prep for a competition or a 1 rep max test. But we will use triples kind of through an entire meet prep, triples, doubles, and singles. And again, those singles aren't going to be even above 90%. The singles would be 70 to 85% kind of in this prep. But what that'll allow us to do is mentally and physically prepare over time to train that 1 rep fashion, which we will be doing in competition. So, simple stuff. Ed Cohn talks about it. A lot of others talk about it. You're 12, 16 weeks out. You start to do singles. In my case, maybe you're squatting 3 or 4 times a week. One day's triples, doubles, or singles at 70%. And then you add 5% a week. And the end of the program, you're near 100%. And that 100% or the new 100% is what you will hit for a single on meet day. Ed Cohn and many others talk about programming in a similar fashion, except they use more reps in the beginning. So you're 16 weeks out, you do a week of 10s. What percentage? Who knows, but maybe you start around 50%, and then the next week's 55, and then you go to 60% for sets of 8, 65 with sets of 8, then you go to 70 for sets of 5 or 6, etc. But basically, doing it in this fashion, which people say is linear, and it is linear in loading, but it's not linear in progression, in periodizing per se. And this will allow you, again, to kind of wane away the volume and up the intensity as you get closer to a meet. I just like to do it with sets, so we're always practicing 1s, 2s, and 3s. Sets of 5s and 10s are something I'll do in the off season, or currently now while I'm cutting or trying to build muscle and strength, and I'll do them congruently. I'll do them at the same time that I'm doing 3s and 5s. I'll still do 10s and 15s. That's kind of that daily undulating style. So you're constantly training all muscle fibers and stimulating your muscle and strength through all different pathways through the reps. I know that sounds a little nerdy and weird, and I'm trying to explain the best I can, but basically different muscle fibers react differently to different loads, not only time under the load, but different intensities. So a set of 15 will add a different stimulus to your body than a set of 3. A set of 3 with 75 to 80% will also add a different load than a set of 3 with 50 to 60%. So we constantly want to train all of those ranges while slowly adding volume or adding intensity, right? If I did 5 sets of 3 at 315 this week on the bench, maybe I want to do 5 sets of 3 at 320, and over the long period of time, I want to do 5 sets of 3 at 350, 360, 400, right? Because that's the progressive overload. Even though the loading is linear, it's not the same as when people talk about linear periodization in terms of this week I did a max effort 5x5 at 315, and then next week, because I recovered and I grew, now I can do 325 for a max effort 5x5. That's another reason Well, one, that's just impossible. If you want to call them noob gains, you want to call them whatever you want, that's just going to be nearly impossible. So what we do is kind of play that one step behind, take everything sub-maximal. We'll add more frequency and more volume and manipulate those factors so we can still progress in a linear loading fashion, but that doesn't mean it's max effort weekly. And then over weeks and months and years, all of those numbers will go up, and then your 1 rep max goes up. Hopefully this is making some sense to you guys. Leave questions below. Maybe be as specific as you can, because the more specific the question is, the easier it is for me to answer. That's just a general basis of kind of low reps but still training high volume, and why we do triples even though we might be in a quote-unquote diet or a quote-unquote muscle building phase, hypertrophy off season. We'll still do singles, doubles, and triples. It's just not max effort like many people may think. So after some squats, we got into some stiff legs. Very typical for me, Bart, Kaizen, all of our training to do stiff legs of some nature 2 or 3 times a week, just because deadlifting 2 or 3 times a week can be very taxing because the load is heavy, but deadlifting once a week and doing stiff legs another time, once or twice, is a great way to stimulate the low back, hamstrings, and glutes, and still allow you, again, the proper stimulus to progress in the deadlift. Plus it evens you out from the squats. A lot of quad loading, a lot of spinal compression, and I find if you do proper stiff leg deadlifts, it'll really stretch the hamstrings and kind of stretch the low back out. After this, I forgot what Bart went on to do. I think he went on to do some upper body stuff. I hopped on the sled, got my cardio because we're still on that cut. Subscribe, like that bitch. More training on the way. Again, leave your questions below. Thanks, guys.